Well, this one's going to be fun. So, the one-button assistant is better than you. Maybe not you literally, but overall, yeah, it kind of is. We've borrowed some of Wowhead's math to do our own, and the result here is pretty clear. Unless you're one of the best players in the game, you are probably going to do more damage spamming the one-button button. So yes, get ready. This is all a little bit weird, and this thing's very existence is going to sow chaos like we have never seen before. I've got big news for the thousands of you who have joined me on today's sponsor, boot.dev, and that news is TypeScript. The entire backend learning path is now playable in TypeScript as well as Go. That's kind of huge. And it's funny, Lane's tweet is basically, fine, you win, we've capitulated to the ways of soy because enums. If you're wondering what an enum is and why you should want one, well, this is a good way to find out. And as for why you should care, well, TypeScript is Microsoft's, to put it simply, super-powered version of JavaScript. Static types, fearless refactors, editor autocompletion, a lot of things that make companies like Google, Slack, and Airbnb trust it in production. It's a really powerful skill. To put a long technical story short, it lets you catch bugs while you're coding instead of whenever the server blows up and kills everyone. So, what boot.dev does is it wraps all that good stuff in an RPG with quests, XP, boss fights, real-time leaderboards, and community. You get to enjoy all of that while you're wiring up databases, building REST APIs, deploying all your stuff to the cloud, and now being able to do that with TypeScript. And by the time you finish the path, you'll have a portfolio that is full of back-end projects, and you'll have the confidence to go in and dual-wield TypeScript and Go on any gig. That's going to look awesome to an employer. And here's the best way to save money. Go to boot.dev/Bellular. Use code Bellular for 25% off. And because 25% of a bigger number is a bigger number, if you do that with the yearly plan, you'll get the biggest saving. And don't worry, because if you don't gel with it, there's a zero-risk 30-day money-back guarantee. So, Wowhead's class writers did a report on how much of a nerf using the one-button assistant actually is to your damage. And it looks awful on paper. So awful that it probably doesn't look worth it. It's just a sea of red of colossal 20% nerfs. You're going to think, 20% less damage. I don't want that. And the list of downsides is 3 times as big as the list of upsides. So at a glance, you might think it's not worth using. But if we look deeper, there is a truth that may be shocking to a few. And that truth is that the one-button assistant is actually out-DPSing heroic raiders en masse. So here's the deal. Wowhead's report is based on their extensive testing, and all of these numbers are compared to DPS sims. Sims being the important thing there. Windwalker, for example, is at 26% nerf. That sounds bad, but that's 26% nerf compared to theoretical perfect play. That's because a sim makes no mistakes. It doesn't have to handle mechanics. It is unrealistically perfect. So with that in mind, if we take that 26% and then just take a look at some real-world data, we can see how, well, accidentally misleading the red color of that red table may be. So here's our methodology. Wowhead's estimates are single target, so let's just take a look at a single target boss. Thankfully, we've actually got one on Undermine. It's Sprocketmonger Lockenstock. Okay, we'll take a look at Heroic, and let's lock the item level to a small range around actual Heroic gear. That basically means we'll get good comparisons from decent players. Now, our first value here is the maximum log DPS for that spec in this item level range, which shouldn't be too far from the sims that Wowhead used. The second number then is just the first number, but adjusted down using Wowhead's estimated one-button nerf percentage. So in theory, right, this is what using the one-button assistant can actually result in. And our other values are the actual upper quartile and median damage values. Basically, what being in the top 25% and the top 50% looks like. Another way of saying that is it's players who have got logs in the 75th percentile and in the 50th percentile. So we got together this dataset and then we decided to compare all of these to see what we would find out. It is sort of rough maths, but I'm confident that it is in the right ballpark, and whenever Matt started putting this together for this video, he could never really have been ready for what he would find out, because it kinda did shock us all. Out of 27 DPS specs, 20 will be in the top 25% of DPS if they use the one-button assistant. A further 6 of these will only be 1 to 5% better, so just about our margin of error, and that leaves 14 out of 27 specs, over half of them, which will be doing between 5 and a massive 20% higher DPS than what's considered a really good player based on real-world logs from bosses. On average, players who do 7% more than players who get 75 in heroic logs. And if you don't know what that means, I can basically guarantee you one thing. It means a lot of you, maybe even me, a lot of us, will do more damage with one button than we're actually able to do right now, which does seem kind of wild. Now that's averages. When we take a look at the median, it's actually an even scarier story. Now by median, we mean the 50th percentile. So one half of players do less damage than the median, the other half do more damage than the median. So on average, the one button assistant could be doing 21% more damage than the median player. That's 21% more damage than most players in the game. Per these numbers, if we were to ignore one outlier, which is the abysmal sub-rogue, the lowest improvement seen is still 10%. The highest improvement is actually the marksmanship hunter, where the assistant, by Wowhead's estimate, only costs 15% of its theoretical maximum damage. Now you combine that with marksmanship having a seemingly high maximum for skilled play, and you see that the end number is, well, kinda crazy. In theory, it does 37% more damage than the lower half of players. Raising the bar higher, it still does 25% more damage than the 75th percentile. That's an absolutely mad amount of damage for standing still and mashing one button. Some other DPS could be playing their absolute heart out and come nowhere near close to a number like that. Now, even in the weakest cases, like Fire Mage and Windwalker, you're still going to do more damage than the average player, it seems, all just with one button, which of course frees you up to focus on doing everything else right. So basically there you have it. Using Wowhead's hard work and some of our own maths, that is at least our theory heading into this patch. It does indeed seem the one button assistant is better than you. And if you disagree or just don't like hearing it, good news, because there's actually a lot more to this story than just the numbers. Quite obviously, the maths is just the maths. Some numbers don't have to mean anything. I mean, a big disclaimer is that Wowhead's estimations don't count for gameplay mistakes. In their testing, they used cooldowns on cooldown, often knowing exactly what is best. They weren't, however, real-world combat scenarios that have got maybe mechanics to handle or some forced downtime. They definitely weren't lying dead after a failed mechanic. So getting the maximum results out of one button assistant would still need you to actually play the game properly, do the mechanics properly, which of course is much easier said than done, especially when properly includes things like, say, Warlock, where both Demonology and Affliction players using this have still got to time their big cooldowns properly or risk losing tons and tons and tons of damage. It's also substantially less reliable in multi-target, and in Mythic Plus your class skills will probably matter way more than in Raid. Basically, Raid's quite predictable. In M+, you could have a few targets, you could have loads of targets. Mobs can live forever, or they could die in no time. Target priorities can be complex. They can involve switching depending on what happens, and all of those factors make the one-button assistant substantially weaker. All that button is trying to do is a simple priority list based on target count, when of course a real Mythic Plus player is going to be constantly recalculating based on like a dozen different factors. The skill ceiling really is insanely high there. Now, the Wowhead class writers did estimate multi-target loss, but that is way too complicated to boil down into just one percentage number. We just don't have the maths sort of simple enough to be useful there. But this is, right? It is easier than playing properly and learning all of the intricacies of your spec and learning all of the intricacies of the content that you're doing. I mean, if I wanted to embark on a campaign for this, there'd be a very easy tagline: democratization of damage. And that certainly would rile people up, because this is solid levels of damage in everyone's hands with way less learning curve. It'll basically let them play the game the way that they want, with less stress and causing fewer problems for you, even if you're not using this, because now your teammates are more powerful. So what it essentially is proliferation of power. I guess the best case is that everyone is happy, more people are doing better, so toxicity falls to a new low and we all get to be happy and achieve our goals. That's what I'd say if I was running the campaign for this. If I was running the campaign against this feature, well, there's another tagline: that it's basically everyone's worst fears about communism. Everyone gets damage without having to earn it. All meaning will collapse. Everyone will fall into pure brain rot, and they will look less like hardcore gamers pushing the limits and more like those people mindlessly hammering buttons at casinos for hours on end. But thankfully, I'm not running a campaign. That would really suck. Neither of those are really going to come true. We'll basically see once the first 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks of logs come out for this patch, and Blizzard's inevitably, balance tweak stuff. I think the truth is going to be somewhere in the middle of those two ridiculous maximums that I just gave out. This will probably help loads of people. It'll probably not help loads of people as well. But that's actually not the only concern, especially now that we've got some numbers to go by. One thing I think we can all get behind is that this is going to be chaotic, and I think Blizzard are not ready for the chaos this will bring. Blizzard talks about tuning knobs for classes, and this is going to be a massive one that they cannot tweak that easily. So, out of curiosity, we ran some more comparisons, and basically this is going to screw up class balance pretty majorly. I'll use an example, right? Marksmanship Hunter had the highest maximum in the logs that we looked at. Retribution was second, it was around 2% lower, but Retribution's Assistant is fairly bad, losing about 25% of damage. That means that Red is only strong for people who play it manually. That's just one example, so to find a hint of truth, we compared a few different percentages. There's the first. Percentage lower than max. This is how far away from Marksmanship Hunter the spec's max is when it's played manually. Then there's the Assistant lower than max, which is how far away it is from the manual Hunter when being played with the Assistant. Then there's this third number, which is how far away when both players use one button. That's the interesting one, because with our Red example, it's 2% weaker manually. If the Red player plays with one button, then they'll be 27% weaker. But if both players play with the Assistant, Red will only be 14% weaker. Do you see the difference there? That's going to be weird for Blizzard. These are three entirely different balance concerns, all depending on the one-button Assistant being used. So how are Blizzard going to manage that? I genuinely don't know. And it gets weirder as well. Affliction Warlock is around 26% weaker than Marksmanship when both are manually played. But if both use one button, the gap gets narrower. It's only 23%, and that's because Afloc's Assistant is better. Basically, the numbers are all over the place, and one-button Assistant makes it even more complex. Now, for you and the game, this basically means one thing. Deciding what to play got more complicated, even if what you're looking for is something that is more simple to play. And I know that sounds wild, but that kind of is the upshot of this video. Imagine, for example, being a guide writer. Reporting on what's best to play is just going to get weird as hell here. I mean, you need tier lists, right? Tier lists are a thing, but now we're going to have tier lists for playing manually and tier lists for playing with the one-button Assistant. And you know that it's just going to get weirder, right? Players will get weird. I mean, in the worst cases, you could have players who will be hyper-vigilant over who's using the one-button Assistant. I wouldn't be surprised if we perhaps get a few new add-ons out of this. Maybe ones that measure time between player GCDs and then sort of, snitches out, oh, this person's got the one-button Assistant GCDs, they're using the cheat. Maybe a weak aura that reports people for playing with one button. We'll have other bizarre things in Buildcraft as well. We'll now have people Googling what's the best one-button talent build for whatever their spec is, not just what is the best build. And as we go deeper, the situation just gets more and more goofy, right? So imagine someone's playing the one-button flavor of the month, but they're actually playing manually and they're getting attacked for underperforming. That's a goofy situation that could now happen. Maybe they might be told to play the easy way because they're just trolling if they're playing the best one-button spec but not using the one-button rotation. Just strange stuff. Or maybe someone's playing the real flavor of the month, manual, but they're actually using the Assistant. And the Assistant for that spec or build happens to be awful, so they'll basically just get kicked. It's going to be weird. So hopefully, Blizzard have done the work preparing for whatever way this ends up going. If nothing else, I think the War Within's last season is going to be very interesting to watch.